Keanu Reeves is amazing.
My mom is a really big Keanu Reeves fan.
Oh, smart woman.
Yes. My step Daryl has a sort of Keanu Reeves.
Your step Daryl?
Yes, my step Daryl. They've been together for like 25 years, but my mom just never wanted to get married again.
Yeah, I like that. I like calling him step Daryl because I feel weird about with my stepdad because I'm like, well, you entered my life after I could legally buy cigarettes. Like, I don't know.
What's his name?
Of Niche.
Step of Niche. It doesn't have quite the ring of
Yeah,
Step Daryl to
yeah,
it,
Step
but the D helps. The D helps.
So, at the beginning of every conversation, I always want to break the ice by asking if you were a kitchen appliance or anything that can be found in a kitchen.
Okay.
What would you be and why?
This is difficult.
And it can't be food.
Oh, okay. Drama
It's
update.
my game, my rules.
Drama
Can't be
update.
food.
Okay. No food. Well, I would like to be something that is like always useful
Okay.
and always like really getting a lot of play. I think I would be a pepper grinder.
Okay.
Like, I'm always there. You're
Yeah.
gonna use me in every instance. Like,
Okay.
you're never like, oh, pepper grinder, fuck you. Like,
Yeah.
you love the pepper grinder because the pepper grinder shows up and does what needs to be done.
What kind of pepper grinder are you? A plastic one? Or are you like a big wooden one?
I would definitely prefer to be one that was like sort of impractical a little bit. So like sort of like a crystal.
You want to be a campy pepper grinder?
Yeah, like definitely something that you would get from an estate sale and then wonder if it's haunted. You're like, yeah, like a little spooky, a little austere, a little cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, but useful and,
A haunted pepper grinder. My gosh.
Also, I'd want to be like a pepper grinder that's heavy enough that if you needed to bludgeon someone in it in like a scream scenario and you're like being chased through your kitchen and you grab the crystal pepper grinder, bop.
And then every single person that you were like, this is unnecessarily big, you're like, take that.
Right.
Okay, pepper grinder. I like that. Also, like breaking things down.
Ooh.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel that you do that in any way, but like right now, in some way you do in my head.
Sure. I mean, I think that I can get to the bottom of things. Well, you know how other people's problems are much clearer, like the solution is so clear.
Yeah.
And then your own shit, you're just like, oh my God, I have no idea how to figure this out.
Yeah.
But when you view other people's problems, sometimes you're like, yo, bitch, calm down. Or like, let's do
You're
this.
like, duh.
Yeah. And I'm almost always that person in people's lives. That's sort of like, people will come to me for like, let's get to the root of this. Let's break this down.
And you're able to give that tough advice.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm definitely someone that functions with like, I can be pretty direct. But I try not to be mean, although I can't do roasts.
Oh, I'm not a fan of. I'm a fan of the camaraderie that I thought roasts used to have when I saw them. Like, really, like how you joke around with your friends. Like, oh, wow, I didn't think you could do that or whatever. Like, oh, you were able to like not argue with your mom about something, like, or whatever. Things where your friends.
Right.
And it comes from a real friend place. I feel like roasts have turned into just the same kind of thing, insulting people for the same things, and it's it just doesn't seem like, I don't know, I feel like a wet blanket or old by not liking roasts, but I just like think they're mean.
Similar. Well, that's my problem is I'm either way too soft or like I'm deeply cutting and it's not funny.
Yeah, I'm like, well, actually, that's why your dad left and never spoke to you, because you're a disappointment. And that's why no one will ever really love you, and you'll probably end up killing yourself.
Yeah, it
as
gets
you should.
too much. It's like, or I'm just sort of like, I don't know, you stink. I mean, there's like a certain narrow lane to be a good roaster, and I'm not that.
Yeah.
I can't.
And also, I just made a joke about suicide, which I don't find funny, and so I'm sorry I said it in that way. Just,
that's why you're
trigger
bad at
warning.
roasts.
Exactly. This is the point. And I think suicide is terrible and scary and a very real thing. So my bad. Don't cancel me, anybody, because I don't want to edit this part out just because somebody maybe got scared or offended. So I'm sorry.
And see, that's like you're gonna run the light on the roast if you have to explain all that.
Exactly.
Like,
No one's gonna book me on a roast now because of this. Maybe I should edit this part out. Book me on your roast and be like, you fucking suck.
Yeah.
You just always sucked.
Got him.
Thanks. That's my joke. I found roast very hard. And I think also that has to do because I'm an only child probably. And I just wasn't raised with like getting made fun of in that way or like, interacting in that way. Maybe my cousins here and there, but
Interesting.
I'm just not used to that vibe.
I mean, maybe that's also the case for me. Yeah, like because I was not being regularly roasted. Well, I mean, I was being made fun of outside in school, but most of that was just like queer, and I was like, yeah, probably, I think so. Like, people. It was people calling me slurs and then me being like, oh my god, that fits like a glove. Yeah, but I didn't have like that sort of bickering that you have with siblings. And I think that really prepares you for a roast.
And then you just end up being like, yeah, let's go to McDonald's after.
Right.
Like that's like an ongoing joke that it's like, oh, we have fights and then all of a sudden you're cool. It's like, no, whenever I had a fight with someone, I was like, fuck them.
Yeah.
It was never like, yeah, we're going to share French fries later.
No, it's like this person's never going to like me. I'm never going to like them.
Yeah, that's what it was like. And so it took me some understanding with like having some friends where we make fun of each other or just understanding that dynamic. So roasts, I feel like because of that part of my personality, I'm like, oh, that was mean. Like, but also I could be less sensitive maybe.
Yes. Well, I mean,
but it's always like you're fat, you're a whore, you're ugly. Look at your relationship that ended because you're ugly. It's just like
got him.
We get it.
Like, because it's like you'll have like a roast, and it'll just be like, not to drag anybody here. Now I'm roasting, but it's just like this regional comic that's working 2 jobs. They're not like, hyper successful. And so it's like, how much further down are you going to drag them?
Yeah. It's like, look at you, still have your name tag on from work. What a fucking, it's like, oh,
it's like, we all do. None of us are famous. So.
How do you feel like being an only child has influenced you as an adult? Because I'm starting to understand it a lot more for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the largest way, a lot of people talk about only children being selfish, which I think you can it can diverge, right? And I think the way that mine diverged is that I was a deeply, deeply lonely child.
Yeah.
And mom working 2 jobs, blah, 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 the whole to-do. And so I would just like give shit away all the time and we did not have a lot of money. So I would be giving shit away, and it actually like, I would just give away my toys or my action figures or my comic books. And my mom would be like, stop that. What are you doing? We don't have a lot of money. And I would do it to like get people to like me. And so I think that it influenced me in the sense of like, I have a lot of problems with love or feeling like trusting that slight tangent. I got dragged by one of those like Instagram like meme accounts where it was like about Libras, and which I am, but it said Libras know how to love, but they don't know how to believe that they are loved. And that's, I think, a big part of like my whole only child, deeply lonely, never really knew who my friends were. And so I think you can kind of go 2 ways. You can either become the selfish, like I don't know how to share, or you can be the person that shares because they're afraid no one loves them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the path I went down.
That's true. I could see that. But also so binary, Michael. There's not just 2 ways. I feel like, because I'm a little bit of both. I feel like in the middle, like I'll share after I have deduced you're worth the sharing.
Wow.
Like it's a process. Like I'm not selfish. Like I will share, but are you worth the share?
Interesting. Yeah,
are you just some rando fuck? No. And how do you use that? Do you use it efficiently or inefficiently? You're pressing on the marker too hard. Like I'm not gonna let you borrow my shit if you're gonna disrespect it.
Well, I think that's the Virgo coming out, is what it is. Yeah, I think that for me, I'm not that discerning, and that's actually been like a huge problem in my life, because
What do you mean by discerning, and explain that word to me?
Discerning. Oh, great. I don't know if I'm going to define this right, but discerning is going to be like, are you able to sort of like intellectually look at something and like make a really thoughtful decision?
Okay, got it.
And
I do that with everything.
Right. And like, yeah, like, are you able to like kind of be like, look at everything and see it really clearly? And like I said, with other people's problems, I can, but I can't always do it for myself. And so, I think I often get taken for a ride by like flim flam men,
Mm-hmm.
or you will, like, I'm definitely susceptible to a charming person,
Yeah.
and it will take me months and months to realize, like, oh no, you're a scumbag.
Yeah.
And I was just doing all this shit, like, less so now that I'm in my late 30s and I'm like, get off my lawn,
Yeah.
like anytime someone tries to be my friend. But in my 20s, I would befriend everyone, and then people would have to come up and tell me and be like, I think Scott sucks. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Like, yeah, so I'm not quite as discerning. Whereas you're like really thinking it through. Am I
They're
going to
out to
share with
steal
you?
my markers. It's like, I swear, and I think it's because I was also raised by a single mother. And so I think my single immigrant mother, being a woman, being an immigrant, being single, had a very defensive way maybe of navigating the world, because it was like,
Hmm.
I have to protect my things. I had divorced with this shitty man who's trying to take custody and my money, and like she didn't even have money, but it was just like you have to pay for lawyers and all these things, and it was just a headache. And
Sure.
I think she operated as like, don't trust a man, don't give people your things, like don't let anyone do anything for free because they'll probably expect things back.
Hmm.
And so very like, watch out always, because people will hurt you if they have the ability to, which
Sure.
I'm not saying is healthy. I'm not saying that's healthy either. But that kept me very like suspicious. I was like a fucking like 8-year-old, like, why are you giving me this for free? That's sus. Like if you
Right.
gave me something for free, I'd be like, he wants something.
You're like,
They want something.
you're at Baskin
Yeah.
Robbins, and they're like, you can try something if you don't before you buy it, and you're like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
I will wait and I will choose without tasting anything.
Like, mom, this person's a perv.
I don't want any
All right.
favors.
Yeah. Don't give me any of your free ice cream. Pervert. I've seen the Lifetime movies. I'm like,
Wow, yeah. I mean, I guess like it's interesting because right, the answer is probably the healthy thing is somewhere in between those two extremes.
right.
It's somewhere in between where it's like trust some people, but also just don't like just go at it like without thinking about
Yeah.
it.
And like the other side is like, maybe you should trust people. It's a lonely world out there.
Right.
And you need help sometimes.
It's the balance. It's somewhere in there.
Right? Yeah. Did you I think you've mentioned also your parents got divorced.
That is true. Before I was cognizant of any of it going on, I think I was probably, I don't know exactly. I guess I was probably like one, maybe two when they got divorced. And then messy divorce bounced around. I had flown on a plane, and this is only interesting because I didn't realize I had met some people or recently, and like some of my family had told me they have no interest in ever getting on a plane. Some of my family from like rural areas, they're
Oh
like,
wow.
they're
Fuck
like,
planes.
they're like, you're never gonna get me on one of those things. And it's so wild to me because I had
Like
flown.
it's like a ship to Mars or something, right?
I swear to God. So, I had flown so many times before I was 5, and then because of the custody, I would fly as an unaccompanied minor
Oh
all
yeah,
the
I
time,
did that all the time. Yeah.
constantly. And so, by the time I was like a teen or in my 20s, I had flown like 50 some odd times. Like it was like nothing to
You're a
me.
pro.
Well, and like
You had your little lanyard thing with your little thing.
yes, and like I got my wings, and I'm like, this one is 1997, this one's 1998. They changed the design in '99. I was like, I had a whole collection.
You get to meet the captain. You're like, oh, this guy again. Ugh.
So my favorite thing to do, and this is the only child coming out, and it's hella manipulative, but I was not deeply upset about going on these trips or going to see my dad, leaving my mom, because I was used to it. But I learned that if you cry and you really sell it, they'll move you up to first class. So I
Oh.
used to cry and talk about missing my mom and feeling really like, oh, it's just a lot for me. And so they moved me up to first class.
I like that.
Yeah, deeply manipulative.
And what age did that stop working?
I mean, probably like 12, 13. Like after a little while where it's sort of like, I don't know, kid. I don't know.
You're like, no, I need the washcloths. I need the hot cloth.
My mom, I miss my mom. Yeah. I wish that worked now. And I think people just like look at you and everyone's on the plane crying. Everyone on the plane is crying.
Yeah, right.
The seats have gotten smaller. No one feels good about it.
It's terrible. It's the worst. Like now that's why I'm like, you're not gonna get me on one of those things. Because economy class, my knees are like literally like, am I about to have sex? Because that's the position I'm in right now.
Okay.
Because it's like no space. There's no space on a plane.
It
And
would
I
be
remember
nice if
one
there were
time,
stirrups, like to like really
at least you could
relax.
relax.
And then you could knock out a pap smear while you're up there. You could
Right?
do a couple things. You're like,
There
what
you
can I,
go.
dentistry? What can we do?
It's like, wow, this position's really blocking the TV screen though. You know? But I remember once I went from economy, I got bumped up to economy plus,
Ooh,
and they were like, "It's 3 extra inches."
you
And I was
know?
like, it's the only time 3 inches doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean shit,
I mean, that would be a lot in other contexts.
right?
Yeah.
Like a sandwich.
Right. Or like a hot dog, because then it would really be sticking out of either end of the
Totally,
line.
totally. I remember when I was younger, the ladies, air hostess, when I used to fly alone, they'd always bring me like the little goodies that they would pass out
Sure.
to the first classers, like face mist.
Mm.
Do you remember back when like flights gave you cool things?
Well, it used to be it was
Like Lufthansa Airways.
treated a little bit more like it was like a luxury experience.
Because I used to fly, my mom sent my ass to India alone. I went to India
How long's
alone
that
when I was
flight?
like, well, there's a change in Hong Kong. So I was alone. My little fucking 9-year-old ass up in Hong Kong, changing flights. Like the air hostesses would like pass me over.
Right.
And then I went to India. And then one time my uncle, he forgot I was coming because of the time difference. He thought I was coming the next day. So I was just in this India airport, 3 a.m. in the morning.
Uh-huh.
No cell phones. I was like, here's my book with phone numbers. And the air hostess was like going down it and like calling people like in my little booklet with the phone numbers.
That's so funny.
And I was just like, what are we going to eat? Like,
Do I live with you now? Wow.
my mom was just like, he's not there to get you. Like, I could just imagine now that I'm thinking about it. Just being alone in an airport in India.
Well, you know what's funny? I don't see, because I'll look whenever I'm like going on a flight and like, people watch, you're looking around. I don't see like kids flying alone the way that I felt like, because I remember when I was growing up in like the early 90s or whatever, I would see other kids that were unaccompanied minors or something, and we would
Yeah.
have like a little,
I even made friends.
like a little Oliver moment. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, the Artful Dodger, and like here we go. Like
Divorced parents? You too? Me too.
and then we just go rob people. But now I'm like, is this just a thing of the past? Do people not send? And I guess maybe it was like the late 80s, early 90s where people were just like, I also remember we used to go trick-or-treating and it would just be like, come back before tomorrow. And
Yeah.
now if you ever watch Trick-or-Treaters, they fucking drive those kids from door to door. Those
Yeah.
kids do not walk a city block.
I think it's just things just gotten scarier because now we're able to see more because of the internet, which makes us
Right.
scared more. And then we're like, you're not going to fucking Nevada to see your dad.
But all that true crime shit, like when you watch, like,
It existed then too.
yeah, like, because they're always like doing these things where it's like 1985, this person killed 700 people, and you're like,
You're like, wow, I was playing basketball outside until like 9:30 at night.
I was always alone. I was I was wandering the streets like a fucking feral cat, and I was fine. I don't know, but
And now it's like the scariest thing. I'm terrified to even think about raising a kid in today's world.
you don't like to be at the airport alone. You're like, here's my list of numbers.
Oh my God.
Can you call someone to get me?
Seriously, I still have that.
You're like, I don't know where I
I'm
am.
like, no, I don't have a cell phone.
What are we gonna eat?
Where's my lanyard? How is my mom gonna know where I am? Did you live mostly then with your mom, or did you?
My mom, yeah. So it was like school year with my mom, summer with my dad, every other Christmas with my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you start understanding yourself and your identity in regards to your gender expression throughout hopping between these homes?
Never.
Right? It's an ever changing, honestly, until the day we die.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about it. I think that when I was younger, I was definitely into sort of gender play in a sense. I was very into Pretty Pretty Princess. I was very into My Little Ponies, and I was like deeply into like hair and dresses and all those sort of things, but it was always like a very private,
Yeah.
it's like not at school or not, and like my mom didn't really give a shit. She was like, put on whatever,
Yeah.
do you, like, don't die, which was her sort of parenting approach for the most part. It's just like, don't die, do your homework, don't die. so I had some room to explore it, but I really put it kind of away as far as like makeup or feminine clothing or other stuff. I put it away until like my late 20s, really. It was like really difficult to sort of process or figure out earlier than that. I was like able to like come out as gay, but then there's like that weird thing where you first like come out and you're like, all right, I'm gay, but guys, don't worry, I'm only gonna like be gay conceptually. I'm not gonna do any of that fucked up shit. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and then you keep like going and you're like, well, now I do this, but I don't do that. It was like a bunch of that where it was like I kept coming up to a different thing. And I think the gender thing was one I stuck with for a really long time where I was like, no, I'm a boy, I'm a boy, I'm a boy, I'm a boy, I'm a boy. But it was just like I was just forcing myself back
Yeah.
into this idea that just did not track for me at all.
Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
think were like key things that influence your idea of what being a boy was?
I mean, probably movies and
Yeah.
shit. All right, like the fucking Sandlot or some shit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just a bunch of different stuff where it was like, and boys are this way, and like, my dad was a big thing. Where it was just my dad was like fishing and hunting, and like, not to say that, of course, like women and girls do that, but that's not the narrative.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Or if they do that, it's normally like, oh, how unique. Um, and I think there was just like a lot of things about being a boy that just never tracked for me. And I think one of the biggest things, and I talk about this in my stand up, is that like men are obsessed with being men.
Yeah.
Like they're very into it. And it's like they have all these ideas where they're like, I've got to be a good man. And
That's why they're all offended lately with the Bud Light stuff. And then at Target, they're having rainbows on boys' clothing. And they're like, why the fuck is there a rainbow on this little boy's shirt?
they can't happen. And it's like it's very it can be really rigid. I think I can't speak to it, and I think that like women and of course encounter that idea of like the really narrow window of like what the expectations and femininity and um like shape and size and various things. But yeah, I just remember being a boy just never made any sense to me. Like it was like a
Yeah.
role I could play. And I was like, I can pass, I can get by.
Yeah.
C plus boy. I'm like, I'm passing,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I feel like we didn't even mention this actually to our listeners. We didn't explain how you identify. And also, if you can just, I guess, define in your own sense how you identify being non-binary. Everybody embodies it in a different way, like how they
Sure.
express. And so, how do you identify and how do you define that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think there's something lovely about also not having a huge, like, very special moment about it where it was
Yeah.
like, because we were just having a conversation, we're just talking about stuff. And I think that is sort of how I feel about it, where it's sort of like my identity or identifying as non binary is very, it just is another thing.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really happy to have gotten to a place where it isn't like this, like, big, like, everybody. Have an announcement to make
Yeah,
because I
because
am.
it shouldn't be that. That's actually super hetero. It's actually just saying that this world is very hetero, and I'm letting everyone know in this moment I'm not completely behaving super hetero, and so I have to let everyone know. And then so you have to have a coming out, like I'm coming out, but it's like no, because if the world was fluid and not super hetero, then we wouldn't need to come out. And so why does it need to be a big conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting, as I think that by the time I was starting to like sit in my identity of being a non-binary person and not feeling like I fit in the gender binary, I was already like in my late 20s, early 30s, and it was a big moment for me internally.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I was just like, oh, here I'm just out living my life normal, and then maybe someone will ask and be like, oh, you're wearing a lot more femme garments lately, what's going on? And it's like, oh, then maybe I'll talk about it. Or I talk about it in my stand-up, of
Yeah.
course, or whatnot. But it was a really easy thing once it happened. Like it was
Yeah.
so hard until the moment whenever I felt like accepted it, and then I was like, oh, this is very breezy. And I think for me it's just like wanting, it feels so ambient and under the ambient, not ambient, ambient and so under the surface, where it was sort of like, I don't know if anything changed I mean, and like some of my garments, some of like how comfortable I felt wearing makeup or how I would
Hmm.
present. But the change was so internal in the sense of like it was just like unlocking a door and being like, oh, here's the rest of your stuff
Yeah.
that you've kept from yourself
Yeah.
for a really long time. You've always had it. It always belonged to you, and for some reason you had locked it away, like in like a closet metaphor,
Yeah.
whatever. But like here it is. Here's the rest of you. And so it was like I don't know. It was something really like chill about
Yeah, it's kind
it.
of like I'm okay with not performing to the levels I'm expected to, kind of, and okay with just doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I mean, I was like, I like having a beard, so I was like, I'm not going to like shave my beard, and does
Yeah.
that mean anything? And I think to some people, sometimes people are still interested in certain binary performance where they're like, oh, are you really serving non-binary if you have a beard?
But then it's
Or
like that is actually going against queerness
it's like,
because it's like queering anything is just doing it your own way.
yeah, like it just sort of like it doesn't matter to me, and if it matters to you, maybe we're not going to be
Yeah.
able to hang out. I don't know.
Yeah. You're
Like,
not going to be borrowing my markers.
you can't fucking borrow my markers. I don't know what to
Yeah.
tell
I
you.
don't know what to tell you. I don't know how you're going to use them. But no, so that makes me think you opened up about wearing women's garments. And so I wonder, growing up, not wearing women's garments and then moving into a place where you're exploring with women's garments, what's something that you notice? Like, what's a difference that you notice between men's and women's clothing?
Well, funny thing about women's clothing. I mean, I guess this is true about men's clothing. And again, right, it's just like it's just clothing and we have it so ingrained in our heads to
Yeah.
be like men's and women's clothing. It's fabric sewn together. Literally anyone can wear it, and except in Florida and Texas now, apparently.
But it
But
does different things, you
it,
know?
yeah, and I think that something I notice. So, like, if I'm going to women's clothing, well, what is considered plus size and what isn't
Hmm.
considered plus size is crazy, and like the expectations of like if you're over a size 12, it's like you're in a whole other department, and also guess what? Size 12, not the same thing on any brand.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
there is no consistency whatsoever, and so that was an interesting thing learning how to
Lack
buy.
of consistency.
Yeah, like learning how to buy dresses and learning
Because
like
men's pants are like something inches, like a
it's
waist.
pretty meat and
And then
potatoes.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. It is pretty meat and potatoes. And women's clothing is like a margarita. You never know. Is it going to be sour? Is it
Yeah.
going to be too lemony, too sweet,
Right. Is it
too,
rocks? Is it slushy?
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you put salt on the rim? Do you put hella salt on the rim? What kind of salt?
Right. Oh, this is European margarita. I don't
Oh,
even know what that
great.
is.
Yeah.
This is European sizes. Like
Yeah, right? Oh my goodness.
I mean, one of my favorite things I've learned recently that's like I've fallen in love with is because the shape of my body, I am sort of I'm shaped like a block of tofu.
Okay.
I'm not like in like wearing women's clothing. I found that like to create the illusion of shape, sometimes I'm in
Mhm.
love with stretchy belts.
Okay.
I love a stretchy belt, like below the rib cage
Yes.
moment.
Yes.
And that was like once I found that, and then all of a sudden I was like wearing these dresses and everything, and I was like, oh, this is such a big change because it was like I'm I am the size I am and I love the size I am. This is the happiest I've ever been with my body. But sometimes certain clothing will fight back and it won't,
Yeah.
or like I would get some plus size clothing and for some reason it has frills all over it and I'm like, "No, I don't need all these frills." They do this thing that it's like I think it's often the mindset is we're trying to cover up areas that maybe someone has insecurity about. And so they're like,
Mm.
"Oh, we won't go sleeveless. We're going to put like a big ball of frills here or something." And it's deeply unpleasant to me. So I end up like started cutting off all the arms of the
Yeah, because I can understand it
dresses.
might feel rashy even a bit. But that's
Yeah.
interesting you noticing that in regards to even while making the clothing, it's like they're perpetuating a stigmatization of a certain body space, body areas. They're
Absolutely.
like, you should feel shameful, so we're trying to cover it up in a way for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
like one thing to design things that work with someone's shape and that like honestly they're like design things that accentuate and celebrate is a completely different thing than cover up and like
Yeah.
obscure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that there's something, maybe of course some people want something that's going to obscure. I
Yeah.
mean, we use foundation, we use cover up, we use this, that, the other. Sometimes we do want to obscure things. Sometimes that is the idea. But I think when it comes to weight, it becomes so complicated because it's
Yeah.
sort of like it perpetuates that idea that it's like, yeah, you're nervous about your arms, us too. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
like
exactly. And you're like, fuck you, whatever clothing company you are.
I know. Yeah. And so I coming to clothing and then getting it and then being like, this isn't making me feel my prettiest or whatever, and then adjusting it and changing it and finding a way to like have my like combat boot moment with a cute like summer dress and a leather jacket, and then I'm finding who I am. And is it like I was really nervous about a red lip for a long time, and
Yeah.
I really fell in love with like a really bold, aggressive, fuck you red lip. And I think part of it for me was it was sort of like, no, you're not femme enough
Yeah.
to deserve a red lip. You have to wear, and I love wearing like a blue or a queer color. You know what I mean? Where it's like, obviously I'm punk, I'm queer. It felt almost like I had more of a right to it.
Yeah.
And then I would always get red lip and then be like, no, that's for someone that's serving pussy. That's for someone that's
Yeah.
serving high femme. You can't wear that with your fucking beard. What are you
Yeah.
thinking? And then I really eventually fell in love with it and was like, no, fuck you. This is a fuck you red lip. This is a
Yeah.
power moment.
Because you can queer your idea of femme and like you're like, this is what femininity is for me,
Right.
and I'm fucking wearing this red lip.
Well, it's like, you're fighting. We're fighting our way out of the boxes that we're put in, and maybe you
Yeah.
don't always end up at a place of being non-binary, but like who you were told you were versus who you are, for a lot of people, they're so far apart. And even with like a cool mom, my mom was never really shoving that much down my throat, but like the world at large was.
Yeah.
And my mom could be as cool and accepting as possible, but that doesn't mean I wasn't going to be fucking traumatized by
Yeah.
everything else.
And they're shoving it down our throats even just through our clothing. Like, this is what our thoughts are
Yeah.
about the clothing, and this is why we're making the clothes like this.
Yeah.
So I guess my question for you then is, coming from somewhere where you weren't exposed to this way of thinking through clothing, what do you feel like is lacking from a utilitarian point of view?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm just like everyone else in the sense that anytime something has pockets and you're not expecting pockets, you're like, pockets!
Right.
So
So how do you deal with when it doesn't have pockets? Like, you're like, am I going to disrupt this gender norm, or do I want pockets?
I mean, that is a question. I think that some of the interesting thing about not having wearing women's clothing a lot as like a younger person is there's still a lot of novelty to it for me. So like a purse or like carrying a purse in practical purses sometimes,
Yeah.
I just think it's so fun. Or like you were
Yeah.
talking about high heels. I was never expected to wear high heels.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, I would like to wear the heels, please.
Yeah.
And like, because it was never forced on me.
Yeah.
It was like the expectation was never forced on me. So I'm just sort of like, this is so fun. And like last night I was wearing a new pair of heels out, and they still need to be broken in. And they were so fucking painful. But part of it for me was I was like, yeah.
I was just going to say,
I'm
did it feel like
alive.
look at you and your little new toe blister?
Yeah.
You're like, look at that.
Yeah.
I got that from heels.
Because it was just, it was never pushed on me. And so I think,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think there, like, as far as things that are lacking, it's like definitely pockets, right? It's like being able to get in and out of stuff without help.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thing about, or I'm sorry, like, to be more thoughtful, that is a wacky thing about women's clothing.
Yeah.
How many garments require help or immense flexibility to
Yeah.
like zip yourself up into, or
Yeah. I can't even. I remember one time I literally had to leave my house, and I had to I remember I was getting my nails done, and I wore something, and the lady at the nail salon had to zip me up because that was just the next place I was going. And I didn't have anybody to zip shit up. So
I'm lucky. I'm pretty flexible in the arms, like a little double jointed, so I can normally get to it. I can like kind of pop my shoulder back there.
yeah.
But it not practical. It's
Yeah.
not, or like the shoes I was wearing last night, the buckle on them is on the non-dominant side, which I thought was so weird. So it's like the buckle isn't over here, the buckle's over there. So like when you cross your legs, you can't get to it. So you're doing it.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. I actually didn't even notice that that's the non-dominant side where buckles are supposed to be. Because I was like, no, buckles are always on that side. That's the dominant side for the stupid ass buckle.
Because you want people to see the buckle.
Yeah, and I just realized actually, yeah, that's why it's always hard because I'm always like, my foot's always like fucking backwards when I'm trying to put
Yeah,
the shoe on.
it should be on the inside.
It should be on the inside. What the fuck?
It was so funny. I was like, oh my
I
God,
didn't
this
even
is taking
notice
me
this was a
forever.
problem. This is how big of a problem it is that I didn't even know it was a problem.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, there's so many things on
Wow.
women's clothing that are like aesthetic over function. But like, again, since I wasn't expected to wear them, I find it
Yeah.
all so fun and silly.
Yeah.
But if I was like forced to wear them, I would be like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Give me some Trinkos. Have you ever had short hair?
Yeah. No, I haven't. I'm too nervous to go too short.
Yeah.
But I have seen it looking amazing. Like Ruby something, whatever her name is.
Ruby Rose.
Yes. And she has like this short, wet, batty look all the time. I love her hair.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
cunty. It's very fun.
I love it.
Yeah, that was a thing for me. Is I'm also like losing my hair.
Yeah.
and so I started growing it out about 2 years ago. Like not like I've cut it, but
Yeah, yeah.
keeping it longer.
Yeah.
Because on a use it before you lose it plan, I was
Exactly.
like I would like to have. I had longer hair when I was like in a screamo band when in my 20s, but I haven't had longer hair in a while. Not while I was doing film stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I want clips. Obsessed with this. Is so stupid. I'm obsessed with clips and like fascinators.
Yeah. Wait,
and,
what fascinators? What is that?
like a big ostentatious clip. Like it's almost sort of like it's
Like
not
a brooch?
Yeah, it's not a hat. But it's like a clip that
I
has
got
it's
it,
a
yeah.
really big clip. Like
Got
there's
it.
a lot going on.
Yeah.
They're called fascinators.
Okay.
Um
I'm like, what's that? How fascinating.
I mean, you like I feel so femme right now. I'm like they're called fascinators.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm bad.
No, I mean that's the funny thing is like the expectation and right. It's sort of like you're like that was never interesting to me. I was never out here looking for hair baubles and
Right.
shit, and that's just that was not an interesting femme, quote
But
unquote.
now I'm rediscovering, just like we're saying, it's always changing. Now I'm in a space where I'm like dipping my toes into some of these more femme spaces.
fun, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like fun kind of figuring that out.
It's always nicer when you get to come to it yourself, right? It's like if someone's like, "Oh, yo, you got to see this movie," and you're like, "Yeah." Oh, you got to see this movie, and you're like, "Yeah, I'll fucking get to it."
Yeah.
And then when you get to it, you're like, "Oh, I really liked it," and then
Yeah.
you're like, "I told you to see it," and it was like, "But I didn't want to do it
Yeah.
when you were telling me to."
Exactly.
I needed to find my way there
On my own.
Like-
Right? That's how I need to do it. Which actually kind of leads me to what we ask everyone at the end of this conversation, which is no matter who they are, your friend, your partner, your lover, your family,
Mhm.
how can someone love you best?
Oy, crazy, wacky. I think the best thing, and maybe this is a little too universal, but I think it's really important to me is I cherish patience.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing for me is I'm like be patient with me about stuff. And I think that's the thing I most love to give people and
Yeah.
like try to be patient, try not to just to give space for someone to find themselves and yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're in this
It's like not add anxiety to it. Sometimes when
Exactly.
you're impatient, it changes the whole flavor of the dish I'm making because now I'm stressed, I'm tense, and it kind of maybe makes shit not as awesome as it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we live in a world right now that's just like everything's an emergency.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it doesn't fucking matter how stressed out and how anxious we are about the things. That's not going to like provide more solutions. And so I think patience and like allowing me to live and to not like one of the worst things that someone could ever do for me is like talk about my 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I don't know, the world is not, maybe it won't be here. Like let me just live my life. Let me like
Yeah.
let's just live our lives a little bit. Let's smell. Did you see Puss in Boots?
No. But I love how this about life conversation, Puss in Boots, is like this. Is,
I think it might have just
did it turn off?
Yep.
Damn it.
I know. Puss in Boots.
Well, you know what? The audio is still going.
Okay. So yeah, just to put it out there, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a far more compelling and important narrative than you think it would be.
I love that.
I highly recommend seeing it. I don't want to spoil anything
Okay,
for
you know what? I will because I like when shit gets deep like that, especially when it's animated.
Sobbed. But I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a segment of it without going into the story where basically they are at an impasse. And the impasse is essentially like big sentient flowers that will eat you.
Okay.
But the solution, and everyone's trying to like chop them down, but
Yeah.
they keep growing. And the solution is to smell them
Mm-hmm.
and to like take your time and not try to rush through this like obstacle. And that's the only way to get past it is like to think like, what if we just chilled?
Yeah.
And then that is actually the solution of not being so proactive.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that's like much more like emotional, but I remember that moment for me when I was watching it, I was just like, I need to. We all
Yeah.
need to just chill because like
Yeah.
the world's gonna end either way. Like let's not like run towards the end. Like let's
Yeah.
enjoy some of the shit. Like let's not be in a hurry.
I feel like, and I can even understand like how, and this could be not connected at all, but I can understand how divorce and how being an only child and how having to move from parent to parent. I felt like there was a very scheduling, always doing something, this and that, and da da da,
Sure.
and it always felt like patience wasn't allowed because there was always like a date, having to get somewhere, a time. Well, you're going to be with your dad that weekend, so you can't do, or well, we're going to be here or that. And it was always like figuring something out. Well, we want to do this because, you know, it's going to be Thanksgiving. So what are you guys? And I feel like that kind of put me in a place where I really appreciate patience now because I feel like
Yeah.
it gave me anxiety, all of that type of like, okay, good, go to there. Oh, and oh, I forgot this at my mom's house. I was supposed to do this weekend, and it's due on Monday. It was very like always chaotic. It felt chaotic,
Yeah,
and
and I
so yeah, I could see how like patience, at least for me now, how my past influenced that. I could see how that could be a great way to chill.
let's chill with each other. Like, and I feel like we're so often just sort of like, especially in comedy, Jesus Christ, in comedy, people are like, is it advancing my career? Then it's bullshit. And it's like, listen, y'all, everybody, listen. I hope that you have a great career.
Yeah,
But if you don't fucking have any fun at all, or you're not able to relax, or you're not able to actually have friends, there's so many comedians I know where I'm just like, do you have friends or do you have colleagues?
yeah,
And it's like my concern about it. And so I think the best thing is like, can you chill with me? Can we be off? Can we not be rushing from one thing to another? That's just chill. That's like, I
yeah.
think a big love language for me is I'm like, let's just lay here and be in the same space. And yeah.
I like that. Even at the beginning of this, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't get this, and I was getting nervous because we were running behind time.
Word.
And then and you're like, I'm here. And then I was like, okay.
It's such a blessing, and I think such a special relationships of people that make you feel like they're not in a hurry to get to the next thing,
Yeah.
or that like you're not wasting their time. Like me and my bestie Vanessa Gonzalez, we've been good friends for like over a decade, and I think a big part of it is that when we're hanging out, it's not a
Yeah.
panic. It's not a fucking emergency. Like I'll go to visit her and I'll get off the airplane and then we'll go to her house and we'll just like watch 3 movies and order food, and we won't be like, oh, we've got to do a bunch of stuff.
I
And it's
love
like we
that.
will eventually. Yeah, we'll go like do things, but it's like it can
Ugh.
be so chill.
I love those hangs, especially when you're like, wow, we didn't even shower. We're just hanging out,
Yeah.
having a
And
good time.
yeah, it's just like it's not a fucking emergency. And so I think that's how I like to be loved, is if you can make me not be stressed out.
The world is stressful enough.
Yeah.
Everything is super stressful.
It's too much.
I just need to chill. That got me chill. But yeah. Well, okay. So before we get out of here, I want to know all of your social media handles, the name of your podcast that you have with Vanessa, so people can follow you on all the things that they could follow you on.
Would love to provide that for you.
Great.
My name is Micheal Foulk. It's spelled weird, but it is my handle on all of my socials. So it's MichealFoulk. That's Micheal Foulk on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. I think that's all the ones I'm on. Find me on Scruff. And then my podcast with Vanessa Gonzalez is called I'm Not Busy. We're getting pretty close to episode 100. We just released episode 95. It has an irregular schedule because the whole point of it is we do it when we're not busy.
As we all do.
Yeah, like the idea is like we get there when we're not busy, we'll record. If we're busy, we don't have time to record.
Exactly. Same with this. It's like, you know what? I can't do it every Tuesday. I can't push it out on the same consistency. But if you love, if you love us, you love us. And then you'll stick it out. You'll be chill and patient.
Chill out. And then if you're in the Bay Area, you can see Queer Film Theory 101 with Alamo Draft House. That's my queer screening series, and I talk about all this stuff on the socials. So if you're interested in that, you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you coming through and sharing yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that also the pup walked in right here at the end and was like, yes, it is the end of the
he's
recording.
like, I'm here for the butt scratches now. You can be done faking why you really came here.
What we say for Susan, our dog, is every time Susan looks at us, she's saying, have you considered Susan? And I think that's what dogs are saying all the time when they come in. They're like, have you considered Susan? Have you considered me?
That's okay. And I know we were just going to leave, but I really want to open because I noticed your approach to Susan and raising Susan in a very gender fluid space.
Sure.
So I want to talk about it because it's my first time. It's my first time when I met Susan. I was like, oh, Susan. And then I saw a dick on Susan. And then I was like, this is great.
Right.
Because we were at Gilman Brewery and the space is, a queer-friendly space. And I was just like, this is my first time interacting with recognizing a dog in a gender-neutral type of way. And so I guess I just want to understand that. Because I'm sure some people are like, what? But some people are like, did Susan make the decision to be?
We say so.
Okay.
Yeah, we say that. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, right? It's not a fucking emergency. It doesn't fucking matter.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so whenever people are like, did your dog? And it's like, our dog doesn't know. Our dog doesn't care. Our dog literally doesn't care.
And dogs have way different gender expectations.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's sort of like, anywho. But I think we knew that we had a couple names for dogs, and all of them were femme names, and we had decided that it didn't fucking matter. Yeah. And that regardless of what dog we got, we were going to choose one of these names. And whenever we met Susan's name, Susan had like a previous name that was just sort of slapped on there, and it wasn't them. Yeah. It wasn't the name just didn't make any sense. And so when we landed on Susan, it really stuck, and it was just really just like, I think what people fucking naming their kids, unless they're naming them after like a loved one who died, but you go through a couple things, and then you look at the kid and you say a name, and you're like, that's your name.
Yeah.
And with the pronouns and whatnot, it was like, we're gonna call you all kinds of crazy shit. Why would we be super precious about this is a boy dog?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think it was almost sort of like for me, where I was just like, Susan does not care what their gender is.
Yeah.
And it was like, I realized that neither of the available options were for me.
If only life was that easy. Like, all Susan cares about is, are you going to be nice to me? Are you going to scratch my butt? Are you going to give me a treat?
Right.
And really, I think all of us living beings are wondering those things.
I mean, Susan,
are you going to be nice
chill?
To me? Yeah, maximum chill. We all just want to know, are you going to scratch our butts? Are you going to be nice to us? Mm-hmm. Are you going to give us treats?
Right. Have you considered Susan?
Who cares? Yeah. Have you considered Susan? Right, Bernie? That message, Bernie approved. That's the thing here is it Bernie approved? So I think that message is Bernie approved. This is him approving things.
Yes. I feel the approval washing over me, and in a way that my father never could.
Yeah. Good. We digress.
We do.
Thank you everyone for listening and tuning in. Follow us on social media, and thank you always for tuning in, and wash your butts.
Bye.
Bye.